Hello, listeners. We're Shedding Light, and I'm Candy.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Susie.
And we're hell-bent on shedding light on unsolved missing persons cases across Canada,
in an attempt to find the missing piece of the puzzle.
What you are about to listen to is the culmination of countless hours of research in an attempt to gather as many facts as possible about the case by reading news articles, online blogs and forums, and by interviewing friends, family, and people involved in the case. We will discuss different theories and possibilities and pick them apart in order to evaluate their likelihood, or better yet, eliminate them. We weren't there. We don't claim to know what happened. We can only try to paint a picture using the resources that we do have. We don't claim anything to be fact that isn't. We don't claim our interviewees' words to be fact. It's their memory. It's their recollection. It's their truth, and it's their opinion. And everybody's entitled to one. That does not mean we necessarily share any of these opinions. And listeners, please remember, everyone, including the suspects, is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Please bear that in mind as we welcome you to
Season 3, Episode 2, Rewind to 1985.
Produced in partnership with our friends at Please Bring Me Home and sponsored by Bruce Power. Bruce Power is dedicated to being an active community partner. Their 4,000 plus employees are proud to support community initiatives, volunteering countless hours to make the Lake Huron shoreline a wonderful place to live, work, and play.
Just a heads up that there is some foul language and adult content in here. Listener discretion is advised.
Since the preliminary promotion and release of Episode 1, The Disappearance of Neil McDOUGALL, we have had more than a few caring individuals reach out to us with information regarding Neil's case. We also contacted a few of the kind folk in Ayton who were more than willing to share their thoughts.
It is important that we paint a clear picture for you first of not only what has been released to the public, but also what we've learned from speaking with Neil's widow, Mary Ellen. Although Mary Ellen has established a new life with a partner within the last 8 years, she is still haunted by Neil's disappearance, and she deserves the answers she's been searching for over the last 35 years. Answers to questions that have left her stuck in 1985. We also want to let our wonderful listeners know that you will notice a lot of bleeping of names as we roll along. Our apologies. We have decided to use bleeps and aliases for a lot of the main characters in Neil's story to both protect their identity and our asses. But believe me, we wish we had big corporate lawyers and a big budget behind us so we could say these names out loud. Unfortunately, we just can't afford to be sued. But we can pretty much guarantee the good folks of Ayton will know whom we speak of.
We wanted to give listeners a little background on Neil and Mary Ellen. We want listeners to fully grasp these are real people we're talking about, whose lives were both taken and shattered. Mary Ellen moved to Durham in 1983 when she was hired at Rockwood Terrace, a long-term care home. Durham is about a 15-minute drive to Ayton. She also belonged to the Ladies' Auxiliary of the Royal Canadian Legion and befriended a young woman who would go on to become a good friend. Her friend was very welcoming and often invited her over for coffee and conversation. During one of those visits, Neil walked in as the coffee pot was always on and the door always open. Her friend and Neil had known each other for many years, as he was a friend of her ex's. Neil and Mary Ellen hit it off immediately, and he invited her for coffee later that same day. They became inseparable from that first meeting. They soon bought a home and moved in together for about a year before they married, just 5 months before he went missing. He was in the process of adopting Mary Ellen's 2 youngest children who were still living at home and were to take his last name. They were 10 and 13.
Mary Ellen shared memories of how Neil was always buying her roses and leaving her cards throughout the house that said, "I love you." He always left special occasions cards for both her and her children. She describes him as the most loving, caring, considerate person she has ever met. And the people around Durham absolutely loved him as he was so kind to everybody.
I don't know if you know Neil, but he was the most caring, loving man that I've ever met in my life. He would give his shirt off the back to anybody. He was always buying me roses and cards and hiding them. So when I come home from work, I'd find them that says, "I love you." And he was just the sweetest man. That soul needs to be, not forgotten.
He would give anybody the shirt off of his back or the last cent he had. He never got mad, and he didn't believe in fighting, but he could calm people down by rationalizing. That was his nature. He never said goodbye to anyone, as he once told Mary Ellen that sounded like never again. So instead, he always said, "Bye for now."
Neil had a very close relationship with his mother and saw her daily having breakfast or lunch visits. Neil took good care of his mom, which speaks very highly to his character. Mary Ellen is quoted as saying, "The good die young." Well, he had no more lessons to learn as he was an angel here on earth. He was loved dearly, and we all miss him so much. Even after 35 years, we will never give up.
We have a lot of listeners that have reached out to us on our social media posts too, and it seems they all share the same sentiments. We'll just read a few of them to you. So one of them was, "Neil was a lovely human being. I can't imagine anyone trying to hurt him. Just reason he must be found. My prayers are with you."
And another, "This family needs closure. Neil needs to be laid to rest properly and with dignity. The person or persons responsible need to accept the consequences. Someone knows. I'm sure more than one someone. The OPP never properly investigated either. Why was the truck never taken into evidence? Why would a non-smoker have 50 cigarette butts in the ashtray? Police dropped the ball because they believed he just left his life. Who just walks away with nothing and never spends a dime?"
Another listener said, "Many healing prayers to bring to light what happened to Neil. Ayton is a small town. Certainly someone will come forward. Many blessings to shed true white light on this situation. Thank you, God."
Neil and Mary Ellen's friend had some of the same sentiments. We'll let you have a listen.
Everybody knew Neil when we were kids. Very quiet person, didn't have a temper, and he would give you the shirt off his back if he could. Yeah, he wasn't a fighter. Like I said, he was very quiet. He liked to have a good time when he was out with friends. He wasn't a big drinker, but he did drink. But he was very friendly. He didn't have a problem with anyone.
So listening to their friend, she has nothing but wonderful things to say about Neil. And he was kind and friendly and very quiet.
Not a big drinker, she said. Not a big drinker at all.
And like we mentioned, he was really close with his mother and really cared and took care of her. Mm-hmm. So to me, that speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm. And those are all things that we need to keep in mind, that he was very friendly and quiet and not a big drinker. Keep those in mind as the story unfolds. So the information that's been made public regarding Neil's disappearance is minimal and vague, to say the least. Let's review the details that have been made public to date, girls. First of all, we need to let listeners know that this was Thanksgiving weekend that Neil went missing. He was excited about the holiday as he had invited his entire family for dinner. He was proud to show off his and Mary Ellen's new home, and he kept asking her if there was anything he was forgetting and needed to pick up. So sweet. He was so excited and anxious and offering to help with everything in preparation. Like, how many guys do you know that'll do that? Mine will, I know that.
We should all say our husbands would do that, in case you're listening.
Mine wouldn't. So.
Yeah. He was a keeper, that's for sure, Mary Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
Media reports state that Neil came home from work on Friday, October 11th with his co-worker. So we're going to call this co-worker Al. Mary Ellen states that Al followed Neil home after work and they talked briefly outside. Her oldest daughter and her fiance from Meaford were there to surprise Neil with her engagement ring. So Mary Ellen had told Neil they had company for supper and asked him to try to be home early. The crew knocked off early that day and they were sitting around the shop at Durham three-way demolition. But Neil was later than usual. And he was always so very punctual. Kind of strange. So right after supper, he headed out to Ayton sometime after 7 p.m.
And from what Mary Ellen's told us, Neil went to look for Al in the local commercial hotel, also known as Blondie's Tavern. So why was he looking for Al? So if you recall from episode 1, Neil had invested some money in a Ponzi scheme run by his co-worker, Al. When Neil couldn't find Al, he allegedly left the bar with someone else, one or two individuals who we will get to shortly, and they met up with Al elsewhere. Neil was said to have returned to the hotel and then left again between 1:30 and 1:40 a.m. Finally, according to police and media reports, Neil was last seen alive at a residence in Ayton at 2 a.m., just a few blocks away from Blondie's Tavern. So not a lot to go on, for sure. In 2007, police also released the fact that something may have occurred at an event after the bar. With a town the size of Ayton, one would assume that an event would likely be a house party. So let's face it, likely most everyone at the bar that night would be privy to who was hosting an after party. And police believe that something occurred at this event and that there were witnesses to what occurred. They still hold out hope that one of these witnesses will one day come forward and contact them. They speculate that Neil may have died by accident or violence, and they feel that some people interviewed around 2007 about the event are not telling police everything they know. The police acknowledge that Neil's truck was found in Ayton, not far from the residence he was last seen at. And that's about it.
Remember the friend that introduced Neil and Mary Ellen? Well, as the years passed, Mary Ellen came to find out that she had been at Blondie's, the local tavern, the night Neil went missing. So we called her up and spoke to our first witness who recalled, to the best of her recollection, the events of that fateful night.
The night that he disappeared, I was with my dad and his girlfriend and my youngest sister and myself. We were at the bar in Ayton, and we were sitting there listening to the music when Neil came in. And that would be, I figured it was at least around 10 or 10:30. He came in. I turned around when the door opened, and it was Neil, and I said hi, and he said hello, and I asked him if he remembered my dad, and my dad was sitting beside me, and he says, oh yeah, he says, I know Cam. And Dad and him talked for a few minutes, and then he walked up to the bar and he sat down on the stool and ordered a drink. He was sitting at the bar talking to I'm pretty sure it was the bar owner. And in come 3 or 4 guys. And I knew the one guy, the other 2 or 3 I didn't know. And he had 2 or 3 guys with him. And they sat in the booth behind us. And they'd all had a fair amount to drink before they even got there. And Neil got a phone call And then Neil paid for his drink and he left. I don't think he came back because it was late. It must have been around, I figured it was around 12:30, 1:45. Neil left before we did. I'm thinking because we left not long after that, after the band quit. And then my dad went out and got the car and pulled it up out front, and then we walked out and left. And I saw what I figured was Neil's truck still parked in the parking lot across from the hotel at the gas station. And that was after 1. We left probably about 20 after 1. Next day when I was at home, I forget who said that he went missing. And I said, how could he go missing? I said he was still in Ayton when we left. I don't think he ran off. If he'd have taken off, there would have been some kind of money trail or something. There never was from the night he disappeared.
So listening to this witness, people may question, I could even question how accurate the story is. I mean, you can't expect it to be 100% accurate, but most of it fits with the other accounts we've heard, right?
Yep.
I mean, it was 35 years ago. She identifies Al as being there, along with 2 other men that she didn't recognize.
Well, girls, don't you find that her recollection of a phone call is really interesting? Like, who gets a phone call at the bar?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it would have been the bar phone, and there weren't cell phones back then, right?
Yes.
So it would have been the bar phone, and whoever was working should have recalled a call coming in. And this witness claims that Neil left shortly thereafter. So was it the phone call that made him leave? Was there a phone call?
Yes. Was there a phone call? Is it just something that's mixed up?
We spoke to another witness who was at the bar that night.
Al is mentioned, along with 2 of his good buddies, and we're going to call them Russell and Doug.
They claim to have seen Neil in the bar earlier in the night with Doug and Russell. The 3 men then left together. Neil returned just before closing, and the witness said that he was in a good mood and he was actually joking around. The witness then watched as Neil left, walked across the street, got into his truck, drove down to the first corner, and turned right. This witness did not want to speculate on what could have happened to Neil and didn't have any feeling or suspicion on where Neil's remains may be.
This witness also stated that Al had been in the bar earlier that evening. They did not recall seeing or hearing any phone call for Neil that night. They did, however, hear after the fact that the men had initially gone to either Russell's or Doug's the first time that Neil left the bar that night earlier on. And when Neil left the bar at closing time, he was headed to Al's house. This witness was not sure where they heard that from, whether it was from the 3 men themselves or others. This witness also recalls seeing a woman sitting at the bar playing cards that night, and she has since been identified by many witnesses we have spoken with. And Russell's wife was the woman who was sitting at the bar playing cards, which is interesting.
A few variations of the activities of that fateful night are also well-known stories that have been retold over the last 35 years by the town folk. Many people we spoke with referred to Al as having aggressive behavior, a known hothead and troublemaker who certainly liked his share of alcohol. One particular witness's recounting of that night was that Neil left the bar accompanied by a mutual friend of Al's, either Russell or Doug, depending on who is telling the story. The story goes on to say that this man led Neil to where Al was, only to find him having relations with another woman. The 2 men left and returned to the bar where Al showed up shortly afterwards. The witness stated that they saw Al, Russell, and Doug leave the bar shortly after Neil did at the end of the night. Many people suspect that they may have met up with him and beat him. Some say Neil, who was a good friend to Al's wife at the time, may have gone to their house to help counsel her about their marital problems, since he had just witnessed Al's infidelity.
When the police was talking to them, they concocted their own stories and said the reason Neil went to Ayton was to help with his marital problems.
Mary went to talk to his wife. And Mary, so this was the following day after Neil went missing. She went and asked, did you see Neil at all? And I was like, yeah, he came here. So she said that Neil went to his house. We're going through marital problems. So according to Neil said to you got to work it out. It's marriage. You got to work it out. But the theory is that believed that he was having an affair with Neil.
People speculate that a fight could have ensued as the hot-tempered Al confronted Neil, which led to his death. Again, many speculate that Al and his two friends, Russell and Doug, conjured up a story for 2 days to tell police. Basically, the story these three men recounted as the events of that night are the only details that have been publicly released.
We spoke to another resident of Ayton who reached out to us with information, who filled us in on the rough characters in town. And yes, Al and Russell's names were mentioned. Ayton is a very tight-knit community. He gave us a story that has been passed on. The story everyone in town believes is the truth. Al and his buddy Russell had been drinking at Blondie's that night. The guys were dangerous. You didn't piss them off. According to this Aytonite, they were, quote, two of the slipperiest bastards you could get in one room together.
So this local man went on to say one of the rumors going around back then was that Al believed Neil was having an affair with his wife, and Al, under the influence, snapped. We're going to stop right here to discuss this statement because we don't believe for 1 minute that this could be true. From everything we've been told about Neil by many, many people, that would just not be in his character. What we have gathered, however, is that Neil had a friendly relationship with Al's wife and that he spoke with her, perhaps consoled her when the marriage was rocky. He was 15 years older than Al, wiser and gentler, and we have actually been told by many sources that it was Al who was having the affair, and Neil found out that night.
We have to remember, though, that this took place 35 years ago, and most of us struggle to recall details of events 5 years ago.
Try 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I know I do. At least I don't even remember what I had for breakfast if I had breakfast. So the common theme from all of the people we've spoken to is that Neil did show up to the bar twice that night. Some recall different times that he came and left. Some recall different scenarios of the trio's presence, Al, Doug, and Russell, as well as Russell's wife, and who specifically accompanied Neil and where exactly they went. But Al, at least, comes up in every conversation we have had. What we have come to realize is we are never going to get a perfectly detailed account of what happened that night at Blondie's Tavern. It was just too long ago. There was no video surveillance, no recording, nothing. We're going on people's memories here. What really matters is what happened after Neil drove away that night and why. But the biggest question of all is, where is Neil McDougall?
It ended up that Neil never came home that night. So the next morning, Neil, he has a garbage business of his own, and he does the private customers Saturday morning about 5 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, I was worried about him not being home to pick up the garbage and about his mother finding out that he never came home that night. This is totally, Neil never, that's just not Neil not coming home. Anyway, I was worried about his mother finding out that he never came home. So I phoned Neil's brother to come and do the garbage run with my kids. So they did. Little did I know that they were late picking up the garbage, and some of the people, the customers, were phoning his mom, wanting to know why their garbage was late being picked up. So anyway, his mother then got on the phone and phoned in Ayton, and she said to him, "Where is my son?" And he says, "I don't know. The last time I saw him was last night at the hotel," and hung up. Well, then the very next day, phones Neil's mom back again and said, "Oh, by the way, Neil's truck is just out in front of my house." And so why wouldn't have told her on Saturday that the truck was there if it was there? Neil went missing on a Friday night. Well, it wasn't until about a week later, they brought in the helicopters and the divers and the canine units to search. Well, they didn't have the foot search until the Saturday, the week after Neil went missing. And there was about 100 people involved in that foot search looking for him. And I decided not to go on the foot search. I decided that I wanted to go and speak with his wife, because that's, who he went. That was the last person who had seen him. So anyway, I wanted to go and have a look in the shed that was in front of his house. And when I went there, he was there, and I said, "Do you mind if I look around in the shed? Because we're looking for Neil, anything to do with Neil." And he wouldn't let me. So then I walked to the house and spoke with, which was his wife at the time, and I told her, I said, "Do you mind if I look in the shed? I want to." And she said no. She said, "Here's another key." I told her that wouldn't let me in, so she gave me a key, and I went and looked. So when we were looking around in the shed, was there watching every move I made, and he wasn't very happy. So when we didn't find anything, we came out of the shed, and he locked up and then sped away with his vehicle. So I took the keys back to and I was talking to her.
And when you went to the house, wasn't there, but was there, I think, and you said you wanted to go in the shed. He was pretty ticked about you wanting to go in there, right?
Yes, he was.
Do you remember anything odd at all? Like any shovels or anything?
That's what I was looking for. Something, a crowbar with blood on it or something, but I couldn't find anything. But I was really ticked.
So you took a pretty good look.
Yes. And that day, they had the foot search going on that day, and I didn't want to go with them. I was being drawn by Neil to different places that day. Well, after I searched the shed with being there, and he was mad, right next door to his house was a big old, it's not there anymore, a big old abandoned 3 or 4 story wooden house. And it had a trap door facing his house. And I was being drawn to that trap door. So I lifted up the trap door and looked down, and it was a dirt floor, and there was all kinds of change on that dirt floor. Well, my husband used to have change in his pockets that it would wear a hole. I was forever making new pockets for his pants because the money would fall out. I have a feeling they had him down in that trap at one time.
So let's just clarify that for the listeners, that the Saturday after Neil went missing, Mary Ellen went to Al's house because she knew that
he was going to look for him, right?
Yeah.
So possibly he ended up there. She was going there to ask him, have you seen my husband?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she wanted to look in the garage, and Doug was there, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why is Doug there on a Saturday morning? And Doug wouldn't let Mary Ellen into the garage. He was very angry that she wanted to go into the garage, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Why would he be angry? She did go in. She did look around.
Because she got the okay from Al's wife.
Yes. Yes, but he was a little bit ticked off and sped off.
But seriously, why would you be upset with somebody who's looking for their husband if there's nothing to hide? Let them in.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the exact same thing.
It's not your house. It's not your house. It's not your garage.
Yeah, he's gone missing, and this is the last place that she knew he was going to. Mm-hmm. What the hell? Why wouldn't you say, absolutely, open the door, come look. Maybe he dropped something. Maybe there's something here.
And then she asked Al's wife if she had spoken with Neil the night before, and she said yes, he had been here. And
Yes.
perhaps in our next episode, we can elaborate on that a little bit for our listeners.
Absolutely.
So Nick and Matt and the entire team from Please Bring Me Home have done some extensive research and conducted many interviews regarding Neil's case. They found out from real estate records that Al's house was built in 1984, the year before Neil went missing, but was unfinished at that time. And apparently there were records of basement cement work being completed in October of 1985, the same month that Neil disappeared.
That's convenient.
Coincidence?
Convenient.
Neil's truck was found 2 days later parked around the corner from Al's house, in plain view from his home. So where was the truck on Saturday?
Cigarettes in the truck. Did someone drive around for hours with his body deciding what to do with it? That's a lot of cigarettes. Are you a chain smoker, or are you really friggin' nervous because you've done something that has made you very worried?
Well, I mean, a heavy smoker is a pack-a-day smoker. A pack of cigarettes is 25 cigarettes. So 55 cigarette butts. And we should point out they were cigarette butts and cigarillos.
Cigarillos, yeah.
Yes.
So definitely two separate people, and smoking over a pack each. Well, I'm assuming, I don't know if it was equal ratio, but somebody was chain smoking. And
So we're talking from the wee hours of Saturday morning till Sunday morning. So within a 24-hour period, there are a lot of cigarettes being smoked. So somebody's shitting their pants and driving around in that truck.
well, and we know that they were smoking them either without Neil in the truck, or like you've said before, Susie, Neil in the truck and incapacitated somehow.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know what? We may get flack for this, but let's be honest. This is who we are, and we're not going to sugarcoat things because, like we said a long time ago, if it doesn't make sense, it's usually not true. So don't try to blow smoke up our ass. We kind of see through that, and we're just pointing out the facts.
So interestingly, Al and Russell both moved from town in the months following. We're not sure of the exact dates, but sometime in the next year or so. Al and his wife split up shortly after Neil went missing, and both he and his wife ended up moving to neighboring towns, and they both remarried. Russell and his wife are still together today, and they live not far from Ayton. And Doug lives in a neighboring town as well. It seems as though many of the details the official police statements have shared with the public have come from these three witnesses, Al, Russell, and Doug. Many media reports state that Neil was offering marital advice to his co-worker that night. Like, where would police have gotten that information from? I wonder. And where did the police get the information that Neil was at a house in Ayton after he left the bar? From the homeowner, no doubt. And everything we've heard thus far indicates this homeowner was Al.
From all accounts we've heard, all the stories going around town at the time and now was that Neil did end up at Al's house after he left the bar that night. And apparently this is what the threesome told the police, and that Neil was visiting the house to offer marital support.
Of course, Mary Ellen's suspicions prompted us to attempt to contact the three men, Al, Russell, and Doug. We feel that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and that they should be able to have their say and let the public know their thoughts and perhaps clear the air, clear their name. We were hoping to ask questions like, when did you last see Neil? What do you think happened to him? Did you participate in the ground search or searches of your own for your friend? How long were you friends with Neil? But unfortunately, we were not successful. Our first call to Al's home was answered by a female who we assumed to be Al's wife and who questioned what we wanted and what was this all about. She said she would give him her contact information to get back to us if he chose to do so. We never heard back. We also called his work and left a message, but to no avail. We wonder if she is even aware of Neil's story and her husband's involvement in Neil's life.
Or death. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry.
You did. We then tried Russell's home. His wife answered and queried about our call, then proceeded to tell us that she and her husband had only met Neil once or twice before. Quote, he left town or whatever happened to him. We apologized and said that we were obviously mistaken as we knew them to be friends. She again denied it and said that her husband would have nothing to say and would likely not call us back, as he wouldn't know anything or even know where Neil had worked at the time. Jesus.
It was such a strange thing to say. He wouldn't even know where he worked.
Yes. Yeah. It was, why say that? Say, no, thank you. He'll call you back. I would call that, and I'm going to say it, girls, a straight up lie. She's lying to me.
The Simon Cowell this season, remember?
I am. I'm getting pissed off. And I'm just tired of tiptoeing around. And I think the listeners deserve to hear it how I think.
Straight up lie. Yeah. Especially since she was in the bar that night. Like she would have seen Neil and no doubt spoke with him. And it would have been front page news after that. She would have realized she was one of the last people to see him. And then we phone her and she's, oh no, we don't know that guy.
And Ayton is so small. Like, it's crazy.
The phone call was just asking for your husband's recollections of him as a person, some sentiments. What kind of a guy was he? Oh, we only met him once or twice. We know that to be a very different story. So that was quite shocking.
Yeah.
Well, they might have only met. They might have only met once or twice. So Susie, before that night.
Yes, but she knew her husband knew him. So don't bullshit me. Be honest. You have nothing to lose now.
Well,
yeah.
You may have everything to lose.
That's true.
And next, we tried Doug. So after leaving a message for Doug, he did return our call, to our surprise, and we were quite elated. But he was very vague and would not give any details nor confirm that he was Neil's friend. He stated that he had already spoken to police and that our conversation was over, and he eventually just hung up.
Yeah. Then Nick called him. Then Nick and I both called him. The poor guy. Here are parts of the conversation that Nick had with Doug.
So you're not familiar with the case then?
Doug answered, yeah, oh yeah, but that's all been gone through. The conversation continued.
Or like, what are your thoughts on all that?
Doug responded, it's something that happened and I really don't know anything about it, so...
But you recall the case, like, were you around the area back then?
Oh, yeah.
Like, so you knew Neil?
Well, sort of, but not very well.
Oh, like kind of him, because Ayton
was a small town.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been there a few times over the years. We did a W5 episode, actually, back last October, and we actually shot a segment of it in Trixie's Saloon, which used to be Blondie's Tavern. Listen, I won't keep you too long. I know it's late. Just two really quick questions, then I'll let you go on your way. Is there anyone that you think we should talk to? Anyone that you think would recollect anything about Neil's case?
I don't know what else there is to recollect, because it was a long time ago. It was all investigated, so I don't think there's anything else.
You don't think it's worthwhile? You don't think he's ever going to be found? Do you think he's deceased, or do you think he might be out there alive somewhere?
Well, there was a rumor going at that time about him in witness protection program.
Oh, interesting. Like I've been to Ayton a couple times. This is the last question. I've been there a couple times, but I don't know it all too well. And if you grew up around Ayton, I'd understand that you'd likely know it. Since he was last seen in Ayton, are there any spots that stand out in your head that should be looked at for Neil? If he like passed away somewhere just out for a walk or something?
It was totally searched. The whole town was out searching all the areas around, all abandoned buildings and all that. It was all searched. So
if he was in Ayton somewhere, he would have been located, you think?
Oh, well, they went 5 miles out of town.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was all thoroughly searched, but...
His truck was found in Ayton, wasn't it?
Yep.
Wow, okay.
So he had to have meet with somebody and leave with them.
Oh, so you're...
Couldn't have walked away.
So you're thinking maybe he parked his truck there and then he left with somebody else.
That's what it looked like at the time, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Doug seemed way more willing to speak with Nick than with us. But yes, he just said, end of conversation.
And girls, what I think is we knew that we were going to mention these three gentlemen. So we wanted to reach out to them and give them the opportunity to tell their side of the story, because I have one side, and the side I'm getting, it's not very positive on them. And I wanted to hear them say, this is what happened, and just hand to God, this is what happened. And they don't want anything to do with it.
Because really, 35 years later, if you didn't have anything to do with anything, like no cops are pounding on your door anymore, really. If you're completely innocent, then just help us, share the story. Let us know what you know or how well you knew him or what you saw. But nobody was interested in all in participating or helping out. So things that make you go,
And I'm going to say it. When you said no cops were knocking on your door, well, it didn't start even at the beginning. They didn't knock on any door at the beginning. So why are you worrying 35 years later?
Mm-hmm. Funny thing is, though, girls, these three men were seen the following Friday night. It was dark, and the owner of a farm property just outside of Ayton was on the far side of his garage, which sits on the corner of his property and would be adjacent to a dirt road that runs directly out of Ayton. And he seemingly surprised the three men as they drove around the corner and came into his direct sight. He stopped their truck and he inquired what they were doing. The three men, Al, Russell, and Doug, had shovels and flashlights and explained that they had been told by a psychic that Neil's body was in a well in that vicinity. They claimed they were searching to find the well. Ironically, this was the night before the police were to conduct a massive foot search around the town and surrounding area for Neil's body.
From recollection, these are the events that took place 1 week after Neil McDougall went missing. Was working in his garage and heard a vehicle coming up from the back of his property. There is an old rail trail that comes from one concession closer to Ayton and comes out through his yard. The time was roughly 10 or 11 p.m. He recognized the three men to be They got out of the truck and stated that they went and visited a fortune teller, and the fortune teller said that Neil M. is down a well on an abandoned property. They asked if the property owner was currently at the property across the road. Told them that lives at a different property. The three men then went down across the road to look at a well and spent a considerable amount of time there.
I just laughed. So they were going to look, but you went to see a psychic and they told you, hey, grab your shovels. But the one guy doesn't know them. They don't know. Like, shit on that.
Love night even, like, I don't know. I think I probably, if it was me, I probably would have waited till the next morning where I had lots of daylight and when they were all doing their
join the search.
Join the search. Let's join the search.
It'll be organized, but instead you go in the middle of the night and creep around. Mm-hmm.
Could it be possible that the men knew of the impending search for Neil that was happening the next day? And maybe they needed to act on that before the search began? have we mentioned how many people have been quick to point out that Russell's brother was a police officer at the time? West Grey Police Services out of Durham, to be exact. That's kind of an interesting tidbit, isn't it?
That's an interesting fact. I'd call that a fact.
Mm-hmm.
I can see people going gasp right now. And can I just say, why the hell would they be searching at night for someone that they now claim they barely knew? Like,
Yeah.
how is that? How do you do that?
Don't know him. Nobody admits to being his friend, but you're all out there with shovels and flashlights in the dark looking for him in a well because a psychic told you.
Mm-hmm.
And did they get together and say, hey, let's pool our money and we're going to go see the psychic so they can tell us where he is?
Within a week, I don't know. Can't see it, but
I wish they'd just speak with us and tell us their story.
I agree. This is your opportunity. Call us anytime.
exactly. And we'll be happy to speak about your truth because we can only make assumptions when we don't hear someone's truth, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So in the week following Neil's disappearance, Mary Ellen had a friend at her house, keeping her company and helping with the daily routine stuff.
Can only imagine how difficult that would have been. Really think about it, trying to be there for your children while you're searching and just worrying so frantically about your husband.
I know.
God, the poor woman.
I know. So this great lady was there helping her out. And one day, about a week after Neil disappeared, a call came in.
And they got a call, and it was a male, and he said, I know where Neil's body is, and I'll show you if you meet me at Orchardville Park and come alone. Orchardville Park is just off Highway 6, about 15 minutes away from Ayton. So left, and she's like, I'm going to meet this guy. And Mary did not she felt very uneasy about it, so Mary contacted the police. According to she showed up at Orchardville Park and witnessed a large white Lincoln-style car slowly pull up. The vehicle took off as soon as an OPP vehicle pulled up because, of course, Mary had contacted the police and she didn't know that. And from Mary and recollection, the vehicle took off. The police did not go after that vehicle. They never located who the person was.
So this car shows up, but it gets scared off by the police, and then we never get to find out who was in the car and who claimed to have known what happened to Neil. And girls, do you know who allegedly drove big white Lincoln-like cars back then?
I'm going to take a guess. Candy, do you want to take a guess with me?
I'd hate to be wrong. I wouldn't think it's the three men. I would think it's someone else.
Well, it was actually both Russell and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, surprising.
So we've been told.
So do I sound too bitter?
No.
Okay.
No.
They pissed me off.
This one is so apparent, right? It's so apparent.
Well, it is. And Mary Ellen is such a nice lady, and she doesn't need this bullshit.
Mm-mm.
So what happened to Neil McDougall? Some, like Russell's wife or like Doug, who spoke with us 3 times, say that Neil just left town, that he wanted a new life. How can that be if he just got married a year ago and was going to adopt these 2 children and was excited for Thanksgiving?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just going to take off because that seems smart.
And kind of ironic that those that last saw him support this theory. So yeah, we last saw him. So let's just say we really believe he just left town. He just picked up and just abandoned his wife and his great job and his mom, who he loved and adored and spent every day with, and the new kids in his life. He just, I'm just going to pick up and leave. There's no reason behind it. Like there's no reason behind that.
And he's in witness protection for what reason? Like, what the hell was that?
No, and how could he leave when his truck was left behind? What was he on foot? Doubt there was any public transportation running through Ayton at that hour.
His bank accounts and credit cards were never touched. Like there's absolutely zero indication that he left or he was kidnapped. That's something else that we haven't spoken about, but no indication of either of the above.
It's highly unlikely that a 40-year-old man's going to be kidnapped, but I mean, did he have an accident of some sort? Was someone trying to teach him a lesson over jealousy or money? Those are the two most common motives usually tied to missing people or murdered people, is money or love, right? So maybe somebody felt threatened that Neil knew about their infidelity, and maybe he would tell their wife. Did something get out of hand and go too far? Was there a party or a gathering? We need to know where this party or gathering was. We think we have a pretty good idea, but it'd be great if somebody that was there that night would come forward and tell us.
Really, I mean, what are the motives behind killing a sober, kind-hearted, peacekeeping man? Why would anybody have any reason to kill Neil McDougall?
Many people, including Mary Ellen, have their theories about where they disposed of Neil's body. Some mention the Ayton Swamp, located about 1.5 miles from Blondie's. Some say the Ayton Reservoir. Many even say he may have been encased in cement.
I think it's only fair to mention to the listeners that one reason the encased in cement theory may have been conjured up was because one of the main suspects was a Mason.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I have said it so many times in this episode, but things that make you go,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if people were suspecting these individuals and he was a Mason, that's where that story or that rumor could have started.
Mm-hmm.
We have to keep that in mind as well.
But if you didn't do anything, and I throw it out to these three gentlemen, please contact us, and we're willing to give you the floor to explain or let our listeners understand what was happening at the time.
And why it seems that every single person we speak to from town seems to think the three of you are involved in Neil's disappearance. I don't know about you girls, but if that was me, I'd be wanting to prove my innocence.
You can be the whole next episode.
Absolutely.
Yep, we'll clear our agenda for sure.
It'd be nice also just to let our listeners know that we will be posting maps of Ayton and some of the locations that have been mentioned as...
maps with all of the house locations, where Blondie's is, and et cetera, where Neil's truck was found and how they all relate to one another in town.
So we'll be posting those on our Facebook page.
And I think we need to remind the listeners that there is a standing $50,000 reward.
It's a lot of money.
For persons, for the person or persons who comes forward with information that leads to the conviction of those responsible. And unfortunately, we wish it was based on divulging a location, because really that's the ultimate answer that we're looking for. Where is Neil? Could we not just give a reward for divulging the location of Neil?
You know what, though, if you're a good person and I just say, please don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid. That's where Please Bring Me Home and Shedding Light are alternatives. There's no judgment. We just want a location. Just do it anonymously. Mary Ellen deserves to find Neil. Her family deserves to find Neil. Neil deserves to be found. He deserves a funeral. The town of Ayton deserves to know what happened to this man.
Yes, and we are definitely not interested in any criminal side of this case. We just want Neil. We just want him home.
And that's what we find with so many of these cases, and especially with a case such as this, 35 years old, that the families end up, they don't care about anything else. That's all they want. That's all they want, and that's what we're here for. So as judgmental as we may sound, and as biased as we may sound, we haven't lived through this. Mary Ellen has lived through this, and other families have lived through this. And ultimately, that is what they want. They want the location of their loved one.
They do. Is
And
when
that will bring them peace.
when we talk to them and say, if you were given a choice of finding your loved one or having somebody convicted for their murder and never finding them,
what's your choice? And the choice always
I just want to find them.
Yeah.
Just want to find them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So please, anybody out there with any information at all, contact us at Shedding Light Podcast, 437-374-3030, or you can contact Please Bring Me Home at tips@pleasebringmehome.com. It would be really awesome if you can leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, because the more listeners we have, the more apt we are to find answers for these families.
Please join us for episode 3 as we discuss Neil's case further with the team at Please Bring Me Home and share what they have uncovered in their search for Neil.
The folk all around you, not believing it's real. How can this happen? So